Hello and welcome to the Kirov International Music Festival podcast series. Our guest today is Ben Lorenzen, a celebrated songwriter and musician. At just 19 years old, Ben Lorenzen signed up with EMI Publishing, one of the largest music publishers in the world. As a songwriter, he has written for Pal Plata, Midnight Choir, Martin Hackfors, Homegrown, and worked with members of Madrugada, just to mention a few. As an artist, he signed up with S2 Universal with his band Brent in 2000 and released 2 albums and 1 EP, landed 3 top 40 radio hits in home country Norway. Ben Lorenzen quotes influences like Nick Cave, Bob Dylan, and Chris Cornell. From Norway to New York, Lorenzen collaborated with a variety of artists such as Ria Tsuji, Beyoncé, and Brian Hartgrove, Public Enemy, and has played at legendary clubs such as Café Roi, The Bitter End, and Hammerstein Ballroom. Mr. Lorenzen, would you please introduce yourself to the audience? You have had the most interesting and unusual journey from Norway to the United States, a very interesting life, and no introduction would do it justice.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. First of all, uh, Dr. Mingstimas. Am I saying that right? Mingstimas?
Yes, that
Wonderful.
sounds good.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm excited to talk about music and about songwriting, and that passion was stirred up in me when I sort of stumbled upon this thing at the age 11, and out of the blue, I just wrote my first song. And I've been playing a little guitar up until that point, but just very little, just knew a few chords. But somehow came across this idea that maybe I could write something of my own, not just try to learn other people's songs. And so I think from that moment on, I was so smitten by this whole world that it pretty much put me on the track that I've pursued ever since. And sure enough, I mean, the mecca for music, pop music, and the mecca for songwriting is, of course, America, United States of America. So I think in some weird way, my life was kind of meant to happen this way, that at some point, I would find my way to America. And so I'm speaking to you now from Maryland. I lived in New York, Manhattan. I lived in Boston, Massachusetts, and also New Jersey. But now I find myself in Maryland. So it's been quite a journey. This country is so huge, so vast. I pretty much only know the East Coast. I haven't really explored the rest of the country, so that's still waiting for me to explore. But yeah, I'm very excited to be
Mhm.
here, very excited to be part of this program. So again, thank you so much.
No, yeah, well, thank you so much for being with us. Signing up with EMI at age 19 is not something every musician even has going for them. So how did that came about? That's an amazing feat.
Yeah, well, at age 16, I started to become very serious about my songwriting. And so I would start writing more fervently. I would put time aside every day to just write. And
Hmm.
um, in secret, I would hide I would not do my homework sometimes. I wouldn't tell my parents. I would rather be writing songs. And as I wasn't doing too well at school, I could probably have done better. Um, but I started to become very serious about understanding songwriting and try to understand, the craft of that, and also how far I could take it as a person. And as a musician, as a songwriter. So I started submitting work to different song contests, also both as a
I
performer
see.
myself, but with my own original material. And that was kind of unusual also. Like a lot of people would show up to contests with other people's material, but I would consistently just
Hmm.
write my own things, and so getting the feedback from that, I learned a lot too. And so I was sort of in the game already for a long time. And so when I started thinking about what can I do with all the songs that I have had written up until that point, I don't know exactly how it came about, but someone must have suggested I should reach out to publishing companies, because
Hmm.
they honor the songwriter, they pay the songwriter, they kind of take care of the songwriter. So I must have been thinking about that, and so randomly just started reaching out to different publishing companies. and EMI in Norway at this point, they had a new person who wanted to do something slightly different with his publishing company. So his idea was to try to gather old talent and new talent and put them together. So he would have songwriting teams put together. He would drive us out into the forest to a hotel, and then he would invite artists who needs music to come out to the hotel and just team us up. you know
Wow.
and so there would be artists coming in saying, I would like to have a song and it should sound like, whatever was the flavor of the month that he wanted.
Mm.
We would then
Mm-hmm.
maybe three other songwriters sitting down and say, okay, can we come up with something for him on the spot, like
Mm-hmm.
right now? So this was his way of thinking. And so he wanted old blood and kind of new, fresh blood, so to speak. And so I think I
Right.
came in on sort of being young and new and maybe bring something, slightly different to the team. So I
Well,
think that was
that's so wonderful. What you're talking about is so important for young musicians to have opportunities
right.
to showcase themselves, to be heard, and
Right.
that's something that hopefully we can do one way or the other through the Kirov International Music Festival and at the Kirov Academy, because and at the European Academy. That this has been my journey, my experience as well. That it's crucial for young talent to have exposure, to have opportunities. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are at a very interesting time where there's actually a higher demand for new creative talents, people who can create stuff, whether that is music or lyrics or other things. It's like because of the revolution of the internet, there's so much more demand also, so
Right.
it
Right.
has never been a better time actually than to dive into this than now, I think.
So, which events in your life musically were the most important in your opinion?
Um, I think honestly, the most important thing was the fact that my mom would be singing to me.
Mm.
I think that is probably, and my dad, he was a sort of a hobby guitar player, so there was always just a lot of music around. His
Okay.
family was very musical, and so there, when the family got together, there would always be music, and they were religious people, so they would go take us to church, which I think was another important thing, because again, it was just so rich with different kinds of music. So there was just music everywhere, and like you were saying, an opportunity to showcase your talent through family gatherings or church gatherings. There would always be a stage to play on. So I started performing very, very early, and you get that immediate feedback from an audience. So I would say,
Hmm.
as I think the best thing we can do for future for culture is exactly what Kirov Academy is doing, and that is um, giving a platform for young talent, both to test out their talents but also to perform. You know, and so if we have many institutions like that, it will only enrich the future culture the more. So I would say,
Yes.
more than anything else, I think it was that immediate interaction with music from my own parents, but also like the immediate sort of culture around being very
Hmm.
kind of focused on music and giving young kids like myself a chance to explore that.
Absolutely. Mr. Lorenzen, do you teach? I mean, I know you're a performing recording artist, but do you teach at all?
I have taught both regular, as I worked as a little bit as a teacher. I was also a social worker as a profession. I did that for 12 years back in Norway. So I worked
Hmm.
with delinquent youth, and I would use music, songwriting,
Wow.
because kids are
Wow.
often, they tend to be very open and not so self-critical. So they would be
Hmm.
showing me their poems or showing me a bit of music that they had written, and I could use, poems and song as part of the process of connecting with these kids.
Mm.
And so
It's
yes, I've done
amazing,
that.
based on what you are saying, it sounds like creative expression is something inherent in all of us. Like every person at some level tries to express themselves.
I so totally agree, and I do think that every human being has a story to tell. Now, it may not be music, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but I think that our collective culture would be so much richer if more people would tell their stories. Either that would be through poems or songwriting, or literally just writing down their own life story. So absolutely believe that we discover our humanity through our creativity. I think it's a incredible, powerful tool that we have been given.
Given that you were teaching, as you said in your own words, some delinquent students, have you ever had a student whom you would describe as impossible? Difficult, very difficult student.
Many.
Mm-hmm.
Many difficult students, but the difficulty is that they see the beautiful diamond they have inside themselves. Like with the
Mm-hmm.
delinquent youth that I work with, a lot of them had given up on themselves. So they would, for instance, say, and I think this is a very important point I want to make, uh, they knew very well that their life wouldn't end well.
Mm-hmm.
There is no amount of punishment you can throw on a kid who's 14 and says to himself, I'm going to die young anyway. I'm just going to write it out and take it as far as I can. The answer to that is not punishment. The answer to that is not more jail. The answer to that is not more police or more guns. It's not, I mean, they've already given up, many of these
Yeah.
kids. The answer is to help them discover the beauty inside themselves. And culture is probably the fastest way to do that. But that's only talking about delinquents. I think this is true for every human being, that
Mm-hmm.
we need to find the beauty inside ourselves so that we have something to wake up to every day, that I matter, that I have some worth, that I can be seen, that I can be, if you like, loved. And culture is, I think, the fastest way to do that. Just get-togethers where we sing together, and maybe you
Mm-hmm.
prepare something, or you have a cultural event together and you prepare something and you put that on display and you get the immediate reaction from people around you. I think that is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely profound. And the problem with the internet culture is that we have distance ourselves, and I think everybody can feel that now after a year of pandemic. The distance is physical, right? And so I think we can all appreciate the beauty of actually just being together. you know
Right.
and so, yeah, I met difficult people, but the difficult thing is to have to discover that faith in your beauty you
So,
know
what would you say would be the main reasons for young students, talented students, to sign up for the Kirov International Music Festival?
Well, I can only speak from, I'm here to teach songwriting, among other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I think everybody has a story to tell, whether you've written before or not. I think that my experience was at the young age of 11 that with three guitar chords, I could write a song. And if I can do that at 11, a lot of people can do that too. And so um, I think that giving your own creativity a chance, um, and maybe explore that side of you will be
Mm-hmm.
extremely rewarding. Um, on a
Right.
further note, if you have dealt with songwriting before, maybe you even written a lot, I think that what you discover as a writer is that when you sit by yourself and you write, it's kind of you're just communicating with yourself. At some point, this needs to kind of get to if you want to take it to a different place, you need to be able to interact with someone else and get the feedback from someone else. And so that's where I think we can provide the most, because the way I want to set up class is that I want to have people come with what they've written and create sort of a masterclass situation where you can get feedback from people around you. If you find someone you connect with, maybe you can sit down with this person and rewrite the song or take the song to the next step
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. And so I have had that experience, like we talked about earlier, being a songwriter at age 19, sitting together with older songwriters and work on
Mm-hmm.
new material. One thing I discovered is that the process is still new to them. So
Mm-hmm.
they wrote massive hits, and they might be 40, 50 years old. I'm in that category now. Um, the process is still new. You're still exploring, you're still learning. And so sitting down with someone who's more experienced, you're actually at this sort of at the same level. You can discover this new thing together, you know. Um, Now there might be certain thing I, as a teacher, can bring to the table. So I can, for instance, say, hey, if you want to dissect this song, there's certain things you can learn from this song that I've been thinking about. Look at what they're doing here. Maybe you can bring some of that to
Hmm.
your song or your writing, you know.
Hmm.
And I like to dissect songs, and I have a lot of things to offer there, I think, where I can point to certain things of, you might want to think about, see what they're doing over here with that little note, how that changes up.
Hmm.
Maybe you could do the same with your going into your chorus
Right,
and make it a
right.
little bit more interesting. So that's how I think I can help. But I think the biggest, um, I think the biggest advantage, so to speak, is to be together with other people and try out your creative muscle, and you will
Right, right.
guarantee you will walk away from that experience enhanced.
And the festival definitely has wonderful faculty such as yourself in different diverse categories, piano, voice, instrumental learning, and very different elective courses. And we certainly look forward very much to your course. I think it's going to be beneficial, most interesting. I will try to audit that myself and attend if possible. On a lighter note, I wanted to ask a few questions about Norway. It's such an exotic and beautiful place.
Yeah,
Have you seen Northern Lights
I
in
saw it for
Norway?
the first time when I was 5, and
Wow.
I was both mesmerized and scared and
Hmm.
thrilled, and everything you can think of, as this dragon, this green dragon, floats above you in the
Hmm.
dark northern sky. It is quite a sight. I understand why it is. I believe I read somewhere it's a number one thing on people's bucket list in this world, to
Hmm.
come and see the northern lights. And yeah, you should definitely try it once in your life. Go up north and try to catch the northern light. It's quite a spectacle.
And I suppose it's just a gorgeous country for hiking, for mountain climbing, to going to the fjords and just exploring.
It's rather cold, and there can be a lot of rainy days for sure. But
Hmm.
yes, another thing that I would mention is, of course, the midnight sun. If you haven't done fishing in the midnight sun, that is another thing you should experience once in this lifetime. Because when the midnight sun comes up, everything turns like slightly golden, and there's a different light,
Hmm.
different quality to light that you cannot describe. Even with a picture, you can't really understand what that feels like. It is going into a different world. You're in the same place, but with the northern lights. I mean, with the midnight
Sun.
sun hanging over,
Hmm.
it's quite different entirely. So that's another thing I absolutely recommend.
Well, I'm making my list for things to do when I go finally visit Norway. Do you ever go back to Norway? I mean, do you travel back to Norway?
I try to go once a year, sometimes twice a year.
Hmm.
So I feel very
Hmm.
much connected still to my home country. I am a proud Norwegian,
Wonderful.
but
Hmm.
I think also in this time and day and age, we have to lift the gauge. I think with the pandemic, we learned something. We are not first and foremost nationalists. We don't really belong to a country. We belong to this world, and every country has
Yeah.
so much beauty to offer. So I'd like to see more of different parts of the world that I haven't explored myself. But no, I am a proud Norwegian. I try to get back there, and yeah, it is a very, very beautiful country. It really is. It's a little expensive though. That might be the only thing. Like it costs a lot of money to go there. So, you know,
All right. Well, all very good tips for visiting Norway when we finally go.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for our wonderful conversation. We look forward to your course. We look forward to working together with you in the festival, and our students will be thrilled, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.